Hi, welcome to Love Saranghae with Peter and Andrea. In the next 30 minutes, we'll take you on a journey into the exciting world of entrepreneurship, relationships, and the secrets behind achieving that coveted glow. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. This episode was inspired by a conversation that I had a few days ago at the time of recording this in September with Nancy McDonald from Art Studio for Children. She and I co-host mentorship programs and retreats. And we were just talking about our upcoming mentorship for cohort. And we started talking about motivation. I mean, had an hour conversation about it. So I told Peter, I think we should talk about this on the podcast. And he's like, okay, let's do it.
Well, I think it's important. Well, here's my take on that. I think motivation is very important because it's fundamental to where you want to go. But you never talk about motivation. You just simply, wish it to be there or figure out how to get more, but you don't really think about and explore what is motivation, what gets me to my goals, is it good or bad? You know what I mean? I think it's a good place for us to kind of delve into it.
Yeah. So today, Peter and I are going to dive deep into that. What is it and where does it come from? And most importantly, how can we keep it alive, especially when life throws us curveballs? Anyway, whether you're looking to ignite a fire within you or rekindle a passion, this episode is for you. So we're going to start with, I'm gonna ask you this question, Peter, because I love your answers around it. This is your thing, I think. So the way I see motivation is it can stem from internal factors like personal values, desires, or a sense of purpose, or it can stem from external factors such as rewards, recognition, or pressure from others. It's not just about having energy or determination. I feel like motivation is also shaped by our emotional, cognitive, and social influences. So Peter, what does motivation mean to you?
Boy, that's like the $1 million question. If I can bottle this and sell it, it's a billion dollar company, right? I think, to me anyway, and again, this definition will change over time. To me, motivation is fluid. It's like water. And it's an entity that morphs, changes, adds, subtracts as the needs, as the goals needed to be to help me keep moving forward. And I don't mean necessarily moving toward the goal. It could be slightly off kilter. It could be somewhere I don't even know I'm going, but just keep me moving forward. Because if I'm not moving forward, I'm standing still or moving behind or moving backwards, right? We want to keep moving forward because that's where the options are.
You used to say you either move or you die.
Exactly. You grow or you die. And that's it. Because, in the business world anyway, you're not in a vacuum, right? You've got competitors. And as you know, in the skincare world, we have thousands of competitors in this space. So if you're not moving forward, pushing the boundary, somebody else is. Yeah. So I do think that intrinsic motivation is a longer, more powerful form of motivation. But I also think that extrinsic motivation has its place. Little rewards for here and there. Like, for example, running the race in Zermatt was my reward for working hard and training. I think that's very acceptable and very healthy. Some people use watches.
You see that, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I love that you see that the race is the reward.
That's right.
It's not the medal that you get at the end of the race. It's the actual race.
Yeah. So I've been running now. I've been training for about 5 years now, and what I've realized is my goal is to train. Like the meat and potatoes is getting out there every day and running, and because I have intrinsic motivation there. I love the feeling of being in the zone, that meditative state. I just love the feeling of going out there and running and training. The icing or the cake at the end of that meal is me going to Zermatt and putting that training into practice, going to running a mountain race, right? That's whether I get a medal or not, who cares? I know I ran and I know how I felt in that race. and the beauty of that race. So that's how I look at it. And you only get to that point when you've been training enough, when you've been lifting enough, when you've been doing something long enough. I think you have the wisdom and the calluses that allow you to see things in slightly different perspectives, where, it's no longer about that $1 million goal. If I could only have $1 million, I'll be happy. You start working and perhaps you figure out that it's the work that makes you happy. The money is just the reward, right?
So it's the journey, essentially. It's not the end result. Because where is the end? I guess when we talk about achieving the goal, when you achieve the goal, is that the icing on the cake?
Well, yeah. So it's an icing on the cake, and it's just simply a milestone. Because life is really all about the game, right? It's about the work. Because if you were able to do everything exactly how you thought you would be able to do it, life would be one of the most boring things in the world. Like you'd be bored out of your mind.
Yeah, there's no challenge.
If you're
adventure in that.
Yeah, for example, if you're a golfer and every time you hit a ball, it's a hole in one.
Yeah.
I mean, how often would you go golfing? Like it's so boring.
Yeah.
The life itself is the journey. Life itself is the work that you put in, and perhaps it works, perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps it fails, perhaps you succeed, but maybe the failure helps you succeed further in life. But you have to have that to have spice in your life.
Based on what you're saying and what I've seen by living with you in the last 10 years, I can't believe we've been married 10 years.
Full decade. A
lot of your motivation comes from inside, like it's intrinsic.
Not always.
No, not always. But I see a lot of it, like, coming from inside. But that's what I see from the outside looking in. But where do you think motivation comes from? Is it something that we generate, or does it come? Like, where does motivation come from? Or where does your motivation come from? Maybe that's the better question.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's funny. You asked that question, and I think that question should be asked every day, and yet I have never really tackled that question until now that you've asked it. So I think everyone, unless you're very special, you could be very special, one of maybe a million. Unless you're one of those 1 in a million, I think everyone starts off with extrinsic motivators.
Yeah.
That's my theory. I think I started with extrinsic motivators. I wanted that nice watch, right? I wanted that nice car. I wanted money to be able to live a certain lifestyle. All of these things are extrinsic. But unless you're a sociopath, and some are, but unless you're a sociopath, when you start working toward that goal, you start looking inward, right? You start maturing. You start having relationships with others, like my wife and my children, my parents. They get older. Everyone changes around you, and you're changing. And as you build those calluses in your hands, you realize that your motivation starts to shift, right? It's no longer about at first that watch goes, and then the car goes, and then all the nice clothes go, because you realize as you refine as you sharpen your knife and refine who you are, you go one of two ways. Either you become completely extrinsically motivated, like you want more of the car, so maybe you collect 10 cars. Now you go for that airplane, own an island, and some are like that. Like you have to make $1 billion to compete with the next guy. But the vast majority of us, I think, mature enough to say, hey, who am I? Why am I doing this? I think the watch doesn't make me happy. So what does make me happy? And at that moment, I think I have a saying, which is, once you realize you know nothing, it is truly the moment that you're ready to learn. So once you realize that everything that you've been working for is maybe not what you really want in life, now you're open. Now you're saying, okay, now what do I really want? What is it that really makes me happy? And that is the intrinsic motivation coming through. Now you're ready to listen to whatever God or a deity that's speaking to you and say, hey, now you've got that stuff out of your ear.
Tapping on the shoulder.
Yeah, now you can listen to what I have to say, right?
So fun starts now.
I think that's the natural process that a lot of people go through.
How old were you when you came to that realization that, that the car, the watch, or the whatever, the next
stages.
thing was?
Yes. So it was stages. So when the very first inclination of figuring out, or at least understanding that perhaps money or the pursuit of money is not what it's cracked up to be, was when I was 28 years old. I was working for a company called Platespin, and I was a sales rep for the Mid-Central region. And I think I had the best quarter of any rep, blow some records, and I made a lot of money and earned some prizes, some sales prizes, etc. And I remember taking a shower the next day that I got all the accolades, celebration of the big wins and the big sales contest. And I remember thinking, okay, what's next? I'm like washing my hair going, oh, maybe I'll make sales do a couple more of these quarters, make sales manager, maybe I'll do a VP of sales, and then maybe I'll do get into management. And I'm like, is that it? Like, is that what life is about? Because if that's it, I had a humongous panic attack. Like, I thought
that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Like, if that's it, that's not it.
I thought that's what I wanted. I thought that's like, now the road was clear, right? Because I remember thinking, if I could just make this money, or if I could just succeed in this job, I've got it made. But that got it made was literally the most scariest thing in the world. Because I realized at that moment that that's not what I wanted.
Wow.
That scared the hell out of me, right? So that was crazy.
Good.
Yeah.
That's very good.
But even then, I still didn't shake, the extrinsic motivator. So I remember when I first started my company, because I wanted, there you go, my first step toward independence was...
Which company?
Tucomedia.
Oh,
Tucomedia, the advertising company.
That.
I still use extrinsic motivators like, if I do really well this quarter, I'm going to buy myself a nice watch. Because I had no idea what else to do. So I use extrinsic motivators to give little goals. But then you learn. As I got older, it became less and less important, because now I have 4 watches sitting in a drawer somewhere collecting dust. I don't even know where they are. Right. So doesn't matter anymore.
Wow, you could say that about your wedding ring as well.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is, I think.
I know exactly where the wedding ring is. I know exactly where the thing is. It's in that black little container that I use for the chargers. And I take it up only because I almost lost a couple of times when I was running. You get your fingers get sweaty and it flies off. But anyway, my favorite watch now is a Polar Vantage M. My running watch. It's
functional.
$200.
All the things you needed to do for your running career.
It's $200. It's got food stains on it, and it sometimes glitches out and glitches in, but
it works.
I love it. I wear it every day.
Do you think everyone is motivated in some way? So, for example, whether you are an inspiring, incredible individual or someone who's a couch potato who doesn't do very much with their life, do you think both are motivated to be the way that they are in one way or other?
Yeah, I think motivation affects everyone in a different way. So there's an old idiom called the carrot and the stick. You can move a horse or move a donkey with a carrot and a stick. Do you know what that means?
I guess so.
Yeah, it's an old saying. So the carrot
I'm not that old.
Yeah. Yes. It might be older than you.
Maybe you should explain.
Yeah, so there's an old idiom that says...
What happens when you marry someone who is older than you? I've heard this saying before, but maybe you should explain it.
So you can move a donkey with a carrot or a stick, right? Or a carrot and a stick. And what that means is there is a motivation that's reward based. It's like you do something,
and I'll give you a carrot.
I'll give you a carrot. I'll give you a cake. I'll give you something flashy and shiny. Or fear. If you don't move, you get whipped 10 times.
Can I just interrupt you? I thought you said a carriage and a stick. And I was like, a carriage?
I'd rather have a carriage than a carrot.
I didn't hear the carrot. That's why I was like...
Carrot.
Okay. Carrot. Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's say cake. Cake or a stick, or Coca-Cola or a stick.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, and a stick is the fear motivator. And fear motivator is just as powerful sometimes. The fear of being left out. The fear of failing. And a lot of couch potatoes are couch potatoes not because they're lazy, but because they have a fear of failure.
Yes.
They don't want to start anything because the thought of failing is crippling to them.
It's too great.
Yeah. That's the motivation, right?
Yes.
So everyone has a motivation.
With kids, the fear of getting in trouble. So when they're dying, a lot of the time kids do things because they don't want to get in trouble, not because they want to do those things. And the hope as they get older that the wish to do something well is greater than the fear of getting in trouble. But it doesn't always happen that way.
I have observed that the best situations are where you are aware of your motivations and you can, at any given point in time, redefine what those motivations are. Because when a motivation becomes so glaringly obvious or powerful, it consumes you. It overwhelms you into doing things that sometimes is not healthy for you. Sometimes it sacrifices relationships.
Yes.
And it leaves a wake of terror, right? Terrible terror. So motivation is symbiotic, I think, it has to be symbiotic with you. You need to be able to redefine it. You need to be able to change it at your whim, to serve you, not to control you.
I think that's a very good point, to serve you. Because a lot of people that I know do things, it's almost a form of control, like you said. Like they're sort of stuck in it. And they have to do the thing because if they don't, this bad thing is going to happen, or these people are going to talk, or it's a very heavy way to live. But then there's other people that I know in my life who find ways to motivate themselves that are actually productive and healthy.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see the two.
Yeah. Well, let's look at it this way. When a motivation leads to action that is obsessive and compulsive, we call that obsessive compulsive, right? And that's not where we want to be.
No.
That's not where we want to be, right? There are limits to that, and we want to be able to, again, control our own emotions to lead us to where we need to go. And sometimes where we want to go should also change.
But also setting yourself up. There's some things that you do really well to set yourself up for success. So if you have you just ran the track 50K in Zermatt, and you booked that race probably 6 or 7 months out.
I looked at it. It was like 10 months out.
Okay, 10 months out. There you go. And as soon as you finished that race, you were already looking at what the next one was going to be for next summer. And you've told me before that you do that on purpose because it's what motivates you to stay on track with your training. It motivates you to come up with a training protocol.
Yeah.
And to stick with it. So can you talk a little bit about how you motivate yourself personally and what you do to get up every morning at 4:30 and run in the dark or whatever it is that you are setting yourself out to do?
So that's really interesting. There's a couple of reasons. So the reason when a plan, I could be very well motivated, but motivation is very fleeting. And that's the reason why we supplement, or at least we combine motivation with process or a plan, right? And a plan or a process has to be clear.
Yes.
It has to be crystal clear and crystallized. So my plan to just simply, let's take an example. For example, I want to run a race next year. I don't know where, and I don't know what type of terrain. I don't know how long. I don't know what climate. So it's all up in the distance. How do I train? Well, so my base training is just run. How long do I run? How fast do I run? What terrain do I run? When the training program is so varied and wide, the process is unclear. And when I'm unclear, the disclarity or unclarity or lack of clarity, it brings in doubt, right? There's doubt. And doubt brings in fear and demotivation. So I'm motivated to run, but there's doubt. And when there's doubt, your motivation wanes.
And the doubt comes through in like, do I really want to go run in the rain today? Or is it really necessary for me to train at 5:30 in the morning?
Exactly, because you don't know. You don't know where you're going. And so that doubt creeps in. And when the doubt creeps in more often than not, that demotivates. The motivation may be high, the doubt is high. The longer that goes on, your doubt overwhelms your motivation.
Right.
And that's the reason why you pair motivation with process.
Okay, so can you take us through like a simplified version of the process? Went from booking the date of the marathon to...
So a couple of things our listeners should know is that I try to book my runs along with my family vacations so that I can spend time with my family as well as do the thing that I want to do when I go out there somewhere. The other thing is I want to be able to go somewhere that I haven't been before or enjoy, not just the running, but also the scenery and the culture and the food. Yeah. So this year we decided it was going to be Zermatt, Switzerland, because I wanted to go see the Alps and the Matterhorn. Next year will probably be, let's say, Portugal, because I want to run the island of Madeira, which is absolutely beautiful. So next year, Madeira, let's say it's going to be August. So I work back and say, I now have a year to train for Madeira. How long is it? It's going to, what race am I going to run? There's a 100 kilometer, 80 kilometer, 40 kilometer. What does it look like? So I will always choose a race that's slightly beyond my capability. Okay, not in or not below, slightly beyond my capability. So
in this case, Matt was really...
I completely underestimated that course because I've done 50 Ks before, but flat. I did not realize. I mean, there was no running in Zermatt. It was a running race, and yet there was no running. And my audience should know it was just basically a climb and a controlled fall. Up and down, up and down. There was no running.
Okay, well, we'll get back to that. We're going to do an episode on Zermatt. But for today's purpose, you're walking us through motivation. How do you stay motivated for something that's so far out?
So I will take a race that is slightly beyond my capabilities, or maybe even more than slightly beyond my capability, because that brings in fear. Now my motivation is I want to run this, and I have fear. Like I don't want to be the dead last guy, or I don't want to be like
dead.
Dead. Screaming for help embarrassingly in the middle of a race.
So you booked the race, and then what do you do?
I booked the race, and then I just design everything around it. I usually try to get at least one, maybe two practice races.
Okay.
So, because a year is a long way off, right? The longer the time frame of goals and milestones, the lazier, or at least the more the doubt creeps in, which leads to demotivation, right?
Yeah, you start procrastinating.
Yeah.
So much time.
Because, it's so too far off, right? So what you do is you set races in, let's say, something in like November, December, and then something like in maybe May.
Yeah,
right.
So like what you did with Mount Athabasca. You did that in June, and then in August you had the.
Well, I also had the running the 100K.
That's right.
Which I didn't finish because I was sick. So that's another whole other story. But I worked back. And then I designed a program to fit those races. So for example, I don't start running mountain type races right now. I'm a year off. I will start base running for what's the first race. If the first race is Toronto Marathon, 40 kilometers and flat, I will train for the flat run. So I will run a lot, almost every day, maybe up to 60 to 100 miles a week of running, and specifically train for speed over flat terrain, which is what the Toronto Marathon is, over asphalt. That's what I'll train for near the end, about 2-3 months in. Then the next race would be something like a trail race somewhere. Maybe it's Alberta, maybe it's BC, maybe it's Ontario. And then I will look at that terrain, I'll train for that. And then now you have a good base. Now that I'm fit, I have a baseline foundation of running. Then I train specifically for the mountains, Stairmasters, climbing mountains. So you look at the goal and you tailor the training to that goal.
So what do you do when the inevitable happens and you get sick, or you have to work and you have to take a business trip to Asia, and that throws your training schedule off, you're tired, all of those things. What do you do? How do you first of all recognize that you sort of slipped off your path? And how do you get back on track? What do you do?
Well, I mean, you get depressed and very sad, and then you yell at your wife for very small things. That's what you do.
You don't yell at me. I don't let you.
The life happens.
Nah.
Let's make sure we all understand that. And everybody who's listening here, who trains, who runs, who climbs, who all those things, you'll understand this. My priority is not running. It's the business and family. Okay, I have a family to take care of, and I have a business to run. Those are my first two priorities. They have to be. My passion and what I do for fun is running and competing in these races. And I would like to do that wherever I possibly can. First, that's the mindset. if you have that proper mindset going in, then you have a little bit more leeway when things go sideways, because it is not your first priority, right? So when I go to Cosmoprof in Hong Kong, I will bring my running clothes and I will run every day where I can. When I get sick, I will take the time off to make sure that I'm good, and then I will get back to training when I can.
But how do you do that? Like often people, it's after a sickness or a period of off time where they struggle to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, how do you get back on the horse? Like, what are the steps that you take to get back on?
Yeah, usually I make sure that the sickness is done. So I make sure that the slate is clear, because it will set you back even further if you come back too early. Every runner knows this.
You've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, many people have learned this the hard way. If you're injured or if you're sick, and if you come back too quick, it's very detrimental. So that's no good. So make sure you're okay first, and then you just start slow. So I have a schedule. Believe it or not, my schedule goes back all the way to this year. Went all the way to Zermatt. So I designed a spreadsheet and a schedule that started
on a spreadsheet.
On a
you
spreadsheet.
have it designed out on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It actually goes through every day of the week, of the month, all the way to Zermatt. And every day I have a color code: red, green, yellow stands for weight training, speed work, like a running training, or you're off, or you're sick. So I color code all these things.
Oh, you're that guy.
Yeah.
I like that too.
So I can tell why. I can see how long I've been on, how long I've been off, like what do I need here and there. So I have a schedule all set up, and I just shift the schedule. So if I have a bunch of reds because I missed a week due to sickness, then I shift all my goals forward.
Yeah.
And I start slowly once again, and then build up. You got to start slow and build up. That's always the case. And the one thing I have to keep in mind is, and anybody who's listened to this as an endurance athlete will know, races are not won due to one or two training sessions that you miss or do well. Races are won or lost, or at least races are run well when you are consistent in the little things for months and years. You build fitness and build the ability to run mountains within decades of running, not with those one or two or three workouts or that week. So as long as you just get out there when you're healthy and build again, that's where the consistent comes in. It's like business. And actually,
it's skincare.
It's like business.
The more consistent you are, the better your skin.
It's also like relationships, right? Yeah. It's also relationship. It's not about like the flower that one day or being a great in 2 days. It's about the consistent communication, love, respect that you show to each other every single day.
Absolutely.
Right? Or, yeah.
But the flowers are nice.
Flowers. That's the reason why I rage against Valentine's Day. You know this, babe. You know this. We've had this conversation.
That's another episode.
We've had this conversation. It is the commercialization of love. All right, we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about Valentine's Day another day.
But that's how we do it.
Before we end, I want to just ask you one more question. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling unmotivated and unsure of how to get started or get started again? What's one thing that you would tell that person?
So I will use running as an analogy, as I always do, and then we'll talk about it at a broader scale. There's something called the run-walk method. When a beginning runner starts off, you don't go out there and run 10 kilometers as fast as you can. That demotivates you, that hurts you. That is not recommended. What you do, though, is you go out for maybe 15 minutes. You walk the first 5 minutes, run the next 30 seconds or 1 minute. Walk the first 5 minutes, run the next minute. And then you do that for a week, and then you walk the 3 minutes, run 2. Then you walk 2 minutes, run 3. Eventually, over time, you start running more than you walk. And then you increase the distance. And then you start getting faster. And then you start getting fitter, right? It's a slow step, one by one by one. The key is to just put your running shoes on and start walking. Whenever somebody asks me, how do I start running, Pete? I always say, start walking. Just walk 30 minutes a day. Can you do that? Yeah. Okay, can you now start walking uphill 30 minutes a day? Can you do that? Yeah. Okay, now you start running 1 minute, walking 5. Running 1 minute, walking 5. That's what I say, right? And usually if you can just get out there every single day, you start improving, and that becomes a motivator itself.
So essentially, it's it's these small habits that become big results. They give big results in the end if they're consistent with them.
Just start.
It's the little things that you do to make the big goals. So, for example, you, every single day, you don't get up to go and run. Get up to have your cup of coffee. The coffee is the motivation to get up. And then you listen to your motivation videos and you do some stretching and your clothes are all laid out. So all those little things get you to the goal of running.
Exactly.
That day. And so the idea is to set yourself up for success. If it is that you want to get up in the morning and run, lay your clothes out. Don't make it where you have to make decisions that early in the morning. Make it dummy-proof.
Exactly. Listen, motivation is notoriously fleeting. You have to pair it with process.
Yeah.
And this extends to all sorts of life. If you're looking to start a business, don't spend too much time researching. Although you probably should do a little bit of research. Don't spend too much time in the classroom looking at books. Just start. An hour a day. Talk to people.
I would like to do 15 minutes a day.
15 minutes a day.
15 minutes a day.
Just start.
Wow.
Just keep moving things forward and building momentum. That in itself will open doors for you and provide the motivation.
So I'll leave you with this quote. I think Steve Jobs says it. Simplicity scales, complexity fails.
I like it. I love it.
And I think that is really fitting for this conversation because simplify everything and it'll make everything easier.
I will give you the old engineering idiom. Keep it kiss it. KISS. Keep it simple and stupid.
I love it.
Is that kiss? That's what we used to say in the floor, factory floor. Kiss. Make sure you kiss it. We always mean this. Make sure you keep it simple and stupid.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, on that enlightening note, I hope you've gained some insight on how to ignite or maintain that drive within you. And remember, motivation ebbs and flows, and that's okay. What's important is to recognize when you've lost it and have the tools to bounce back. Thanks for tuning in with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea.
Au revoir.
Thanks for listening to Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our show. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and share this podcast with someone you think would love it. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and love the world.